All right, today we are jumping into a really fascinating and, let's be honest, pretty controversial argument from the early 20th century. It's this wild proposal to completely change how political leadership works by using the principles of, well, propaganda. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I know. That word today, it's got a lot of baggage, right? But the source we're looking at saw it in a totally different light. Not as this tool for lying, but as the most effective way to lead in the modern world. And to really get that, we kind of have to transport ourselves back in time. So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the problem our author saw with politics. Then we'll check out the solution he pulled from the world of business. From there, we'll get into the actual tactics, the huge strategy behind it, and finally, we'll ask, what kind of democracy does all this lead to?
Okay, so first up, the diagnosis. The core idea here is that the political system back then was just broken. It was completely out of touch with the very people it was supposed to be serving. And what's so interesting is how the author frames this. See, it's not that the voters are lazy or dumb. Nope. The blame falls right on the politicians who, he says, have no idea how to connect with people, how to make their ideas exciting, or how to address what people actually care about. And the critique is pretty brutal. He says political methods are as old-fashioned as ads from the turn of the century. Campaigns? Just a bunch of glitter and ballyhoo, all flash, no substance. And because leaders just can't make their platforms feel important, the public has just completely checked out. So, if politics is broken, what's the fix? Well, the answer, according to our text, is surprisingly direct. Politics needs to start acting like the most successful thing going at the time: big business. It needs to learn to sell its ideas just like a company sells a bar of soap. And to show just how ridiculously inefficient old politics was, the source gives this amazing example. You've got a senator and his whole team going on this huge 5-day speaking tour covering 1,000 miles, and at the end of it all, they might have swayed just over 1,000 people. I mean, think about that. All that effort for such a tiny result. And this number just nails the point home. That's how much it costs to change one person's mind. You have to ask yourself, what successful business would ever put up with that kind of terrible return on investment? The answer is none of them. So here's the big contrast, right? Politics is over here running on guesswork, just trying to sell a personality. Meanwhile, modern business is using systematic study, scientifically analyzing the public, and carefully budgeting every dollar to sell a product. The whole idea is to take that business discipline and plug it straight into politics. Okay, so let's get into the actual playbook. This isn't just some vague concept. The author lays out a really clear step-by-step process for running a political campaign exactly like a business would launch a brand new product. And it starts just like you'd expect a business plan to. First, you figure out your exact objectives. Then, you do your market research, a scientific deep dive into what the public actually wants. With that info, you build a platform so good it's like it has a money-back guarantee. And finally, you budget everything, every single dollar, with total precision. No more of that random spending. And here's where it gets really smart. The author says, look, the public isn't just a giant blob of individuals. It's made up of all these different groups with their own interests. So the smart move isn't to yell into the void. It's to appeal to those specific groups. Think about it. When President Coolidge invited a bunch of actors to the White House, he wasn't just hanging out with stars. He was sending a powerful signal to everyone who loves movies and theater. But this is so much bigger than just winning one election. The author's vision is way, way grander. We're talking about constantly shaping the public's reality by masterfully creating events. This quote right here is the absolute core of it. A real leader doesn't just react to things or repeat the same old talking points. No, they create the circumstances that make their ideas seem vital and obvious. They don't just follow the news, they make the news. So what does that actually look like? Well, let's say you want to campaign for a low tariff. The old, boring way is to give a speech about economics. The new way? You stage exhibitions in cities, showing people exactly how much more a high tariff makes them pay for a coat. You organize boycotts. You dramatize the issue. So the leader's point becomes totally obvious without him even having to argue it. This is just a mind-blowing real-world example from the text. The actual birth of a nation, Czechoslovakia, was delayed by 1 day. Why? Because the guys in charge realized that a Monday announcement would get way more newspaper coverage than a Sunday one.
They weren't just making history, they were timing history for maximum propaganda value. Incredible. Okay, so where does all of this lead? What happens when you use these techniques not just for a campaign, but for the day-to-day job of governing? I mean, what kind of democracy does that even look like?
Well, here it is, laid out in the plainest terms. It's a government where a smart minority continuously uses these techniques to regiment and guide the masses. The whole point is to steer public opinion all the time on every issue.
And to make this official, to bake it right into the system, the author even suggests a brand new cabinet position, a Secretary of Public Relations. Their whole job would be to be this professional link, translating what the people want to the government and then translating what the government is doing back to the people. Now, the author knew this sounded intense, so he tries to reframe it. He says, look, if you don't like the term propaganda, call it, if you prefer, government by education. But it's a very particular kind of education, one that works by creating big, significant events that focus everyone's attention and guide them towards what he calls intelligent action.
And that brings us to the big question, the one that's just as alive today as it was 100 years ago. Is this whole thing a blueprint for smarter, more effective leadership that's actually in touch with the people? Or is it just a manual for expertly manipulating the public mind? That's definitely something to chew on.
For more insights like this, scan the QR code, visit cltsolutions.ca, or email us anytime at info@cltsolutions.ca.